and the Jesus of the true Christian faith is that the Jesus of the Bible and the Jesus of the historical Christian faith is a Jesus that lays claims to divinity. And what distinguishes him from all of the other predecessors and all of the other contemporaries of him, there were other prophets that performed miracles. There were other prophets that had major movements and major followings of people. But all the prophets before Jesus, they all died. And their tombs are still with us. And so it's Jesus of Nazareth. It's Jesus the Christ, where there is no tomb, there is no marker for his burial, because he rose from the dead as he said he would. Now, even in the modern era, there have been a lot of attempts to explain away the resurrection of Christ. And one of those theories is called the swoon theory. And the swoon theory says that yes, there was a Jesus, yes, he was betrayed, and yes, he was crucified, and yes, he was beaten and battered, manhandled and mauled, hung on the cross. However, on the cross, he didn't die, they say. No, he went into a deep coma, they say, and when he was placed in the tomb with the big stone in front of the tomb and sealed with the Roman seal, that he was comatose, but the cool, damp atmosphere of the tomb caused him to be revived. But he wasn't really dead, so it wasn't a true resurrection. He was only comatose. He was revived, got up from a comatose position after losing an inordinate amount of blood, moved the stone away, overthrew the Roman guards, exodus up over to Egypt, lived incognito until he died, was buried in a secret place. And that's why there's no grave, they say. That's the swoon theory. And then there's the kidnap theory. Now, these are not bogus claims. These are theologians making these claims. The kidnap theory say, yes, there was a Jesus, yes, there was a betrayal, yes, there was a crucifixion, and yes, there was a burial, and yes, there was a death. He did die. Now, the kidnap theorists, they really have a little bit more integrity than the swoon theorists. Because, see, the kidnap theorists, they recognize that in the Roman government, when Rome sentenced you to be crucified, you died. Wasn't no swooning. Wasn't no being revived. No, you died because the Roman soldiers, they were professional executioners. So they wasn't a bunch of ragtag, unqualified group of folk just trying to kill somebody. No, when they tried to kill somebody, they became very, very dead. And that's why one of the things they would do when a person was on the cross, if they wanted to hasten or speed up the death, they would take their big club and they would break the person's legs. And in breaking their legs, the person would no longer be able to push where they could inhale and exhale, and they would suffocate, which was the way people most of the time, they died on the cross. You didn't die from a loss of blood. You didn't die from exposure. You died from suffocation. You died because you were so positioned on the cross that your internal organs were not able to function properly, and once you lost so much blood and become so fatigued, you were unable to inhale and exhale. Crucifixion was designed to prolong death. It was to be gruesome. It was barbaric. So they would either break the person's legs if there was any question to whether or not they were dead and make sure they suffocated on the cross, or the professional Roman soldiers would do what they did to Jesus because he wasn't dying fast enough and they wanted him dead before the Passover came. They would take a spear, they would jam it up beneath the rib cage, and they would puncture the heart to make sure you expired on the cross. And that's what they did with Jesus. And that's why the Bible says that when they did that, the blood and water came out, signifying, according to cardiologists, he died of a ruptured heart. But he was dead. They didn't break his legs, not because they were not sadistic and barbaric. They didn't break his legs because God refrained them from breaking his leg. Because in the Old Testament, the prophets had prophesied not a bone in his body would be broken. And so his bones were not broken. So those who ascribe to the kidnap theory, they know, now you can't pass off some bogus argument that he didn't die on the cross. No, he really did die on the cross. The Romans really made sure that he was dead. They took him away and they placed him in the tomb and they sealed it as they would do, and they set the Roman soldiers out there to guard the tomb according to what Herod had, or Pilate had told them to do. But here's what happened. The disciples, all who had fled and left him when he was arrested, Peter, who had denied him 3 times and cursed the girl out the last time when she said he was one of his disciples, all of them who had ran and fled, once they came to themselves, they overcame their fear. They returned back to the tomb. They overthrew the Roman soldiers. They moved away the stone. They kidnapped the body. They took the body and they hid it somewhere. And nobody ever found the body. And then they went out proclaiming this preposterous claim that Christ had been raised from the dead. And those are legitimate arguments that so-called theologians are trying to postulate to explain away the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. But it is the anchor truth. It is what nails down our faith. It is what distinguishes our belief system from all other belief systems. We believe that Jesus Christ was God in the flesh, offered himself up as the perfect sacrifice, and to prove his divine credentials, he did what no man could do. He was resuscitated, he was revived, he was resurrected from the dead to die no more, and he lives forevermore on the right hand of the Father. That's what we believe in historic Christianity. In historic Christianity, there's a new brands of Christianity that are emerging on the scene where you can believe whatever you want to believe. We're coming up with a Christian theology that is void of substance and that is void of any doctrinal clarity. So believe ever what you want to believe. Just go on with God, and we all going to end up on the other side in the end. I don't think it works like that. There is a body of truth that was delivered to the church. Jude refers to it that we should earnestly contend for the faith that was once and for all delivered unto the saints. The faith, the body of truth. And the basic body of truth of the Christian faith is the gospel. That's why Jesus, on so many occasions, told his disciples, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed. He's going to be crucified, but on the 3rd day, he's going to be raised from the dead. That's what his life was all about. That was the heart of the gospel. That is where salvation will be wrought and brought to the hearts of sinful men. So we followed him all the way through this text for the last year and a half or so in our study of the book of Luke. And then we come to chapter 24. He has been crucified. He has been buried. Members of the burial party, some of those faithful women that had financed and supported his ministry, had prayed for him. They came back to show their final respect and to properly put the spices and things that would be around his body. But when they got there, they found that the tomb had already been rolled away. And there were 2 angels that were there, these men in these shining garments. And they said to the women, "Why are you looking for him here? And why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here, but he's risen. Remember, he spoke to you when he was still in Galilee." And so now the angels remind them of what Jesus had already shared with them, that he would be raised from the dead. And they remembered his words in verse 8. And they returned from the tomb and told these things to the 11 and to all the rest, verse 9. And the words seemed to them like idle tales. Like idle tales. So these men who had walked with Jesus, whom had been at the feet of Christ, whom Jesus had taught directly, who had shared with them that he would be betrayed, crucified, buried, and raised, but when they hear from the lips of these faithful women that had went to the tomb that Christ was not there, but that he had been raised from the dead according to the angels, the Bible says that it appeared to them as idle fables. It's not much different than it is today. It's not much different than it is today. People's lives will be in turmoil. They will be going through difficulty and hardship and pain and all type of chaos and confusion. But for you to suggest to them, you know what, you really need to consider where you are in your life. And you really need to consider the claims of Jesus Christ. That he died for you on the cross, was buried and raised from the dead. You ought to yield and surrender your life to Christ. And that sounds like an idle fable. Something that is preposterous. Tell them something complicated or difficult to do, and they will give you a legitimate hearing. But share with them in its simplicity the gospel of Jesus Christ, and it appears like a fable, like a fairy tale. And so nothing is new. This will often be response to the heralders of the gospel. But what I want to always remember